Okay, so this is the Apprenticeship 2026 program info session. I want to start out by just sharing the link to the web page that has all of the information for the applications, in case anybody does not have that yet. Although I'm assuming that if you're here, you probably got the link from there. So um, you probably have already seen that. Just in case, the link is in the chat. So if you want to save that. And then I'm going to open this back up here. So I'm Janelle Ramirez. I am the Director of Education and Documentation Programs at Texas Folklife. That includes the Apprenticeship Program and the Fellowship Program. And I also run our Salon series in Austin. And I've been with Texas Folklife since 2020. So this is the second time I'm running the apprenticeship program, and I've ran the fellowship program 3 times now. So I'm happy to answer any questions that come up. I just ask that you hold off until there's a pause in the presentation or until the end. So I will try to pause periodically for questions. Okay, so let's get into it. What is the apprenticeship program? So our apprenticeship program provides awards for artist mentors to offer training in art, cultural heritage, and other practices for a period of about 6 months. It's been around since 1987, and we've supported at this point probably much more than that number. So I think we're definitely over 400 at this point, 400 artists that we've supported since 1987. The artist mentors are individuals who are recognized in their respective communities for having an expertise in a particular traditional art or cultural practice. And the apprentice is someone who demonstrates an intention to enhance their established skills. So the apprentices are not necessarily beginners, they tend to be at a kind of intermediate level and have an existing relationship with the mentor. I often get asked if you can just apply individually and be paired with someone. The answer is no. You have to apply together as a mentor and an apprentice. And each pair will present a work plan and then a final presentation that showcases the results of their work. Okay, so what are the folk and traditional arts? What do we mean by that? These are arts that are rooted in communities. They are passed down from person to person. Very often, though not always, they don't necessarily have institutional support, or they may not have as much institutional support as other arts. The folk and traditional arts can encompass many art forms. So we've had artists that work in all of these different realms. We've had a lot of performing artists, but we've also had people doing foodways, visual arts, storytelling, um, various types of crafts, and healing arts. A little bit about the program guidelines. So this is about eligibility. Who can apply? In in a sense, it's very open. So we welcome applications from traditional and cultural bearers from all over Texas that work in folk and traditional arts or practices. We do prioritize traditions where the mentor has been trained outside of institutional structures and is passing on this tradition again from person to person because that institutional support doesn't necessarily exist. So that's where we come in with programs like this to try to support the sustainability of these art forms. I also often get a question about whether it needs to be a one-on-one mentor apprenticeship model. And the short answer to that is no, it does not need to be. But if you are planning on applying with maybe two apprentices or something like that, I would highly suggest that you email me to just talk about what it is that you're thinking. And my email is going to be here in the chat. And I'll keep sharing this throughout as people join us. But if you can go ahead and email me, I can try to answer questions about that model. There is an award that comes with the apprenticeship if you're selected. The awards are up to 4,500. That doesn't mean that every pair will get 4,500, but that it would be the maximum that we would award for a single pair. The intention of this award is to cover the artist mentor's fees, as well as supplies, materials, and travel. Typically, the majority of this award goes toward the mentor's fees, and the rest of it is for these other categories. So oftentimes, maybe the apprentice doesn't live in the same town as the mentor, and they have to travel to work together or to do their public workshop. That's something that could fall into an expense that's covered by this award. So the period of support, this would be starting in February, and I'll talk a little more about the timeline in a few slides, but that is sort of a general guideline. There are some apprenticeship pairs that have been maybe working for less than that full amount of time. We do encourage people to work together for that full period, but again, because the award amounts vary, there's some flexibility there in terms of the length that you work together. We also have lots of people that work together for much longer than the length of the apprenticeship. That's very common actually, because people maybe are already working together to some extent. And that's absolutely fine too, but we just want to see some really clear parameters and goals of what you want to accomplish during the period of the apprenticeship. So some more notes on eligibility. The apprentice must reside in Texas. The mentor should, but does not have to reside in Texas. And so what we mean by that is that they can live in one of these border states. So that can be Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, or Arkansas. And we have had, for example, a flamenco pair that the mentor was in New Mexico and the apprentice was in Texas. And that is absolutely fine because the passing on of the tradition is going into Texas in this case. If it were the other way around, it would not be eligible. So if the mentor was in Texas and the apprentice was in New Mexico, then that would not be a good fit for this program. Something on age requirements, we have had teens that have participated as apprentices. There's no age requirement. We usually have probably one or two pairs per cycle that someone's like a high school senior or high school student in general. So that's absolutely fine. And on the other end, there's no age limit in terms of how old an artist mentor can be. In the last cohort, we had somebody who was in their 90s. So there's absolutely no age requirements as long as you can fill out the application, and if you're selected, then you're selected. This is another really important point. So if you participated in last year's cohort, you can't apply again this year. If you were in 2024, that's absolutely fine. You can apply again. But anybody who was in last year's cohort has to wait a year to reapply. And this is just to allow us to support more artists over time. so that it's not always the same people getting the awards. Okay, things that we will not fund. In general, historic projects, so recreation of historical artifacts, anything that's a reenactment of something from the distant past. As an organization, we really support living traditions. That doesn't mean that they have to be popular, but they are living. So it's not finding something that existed 300 years ago and trying to resurrect it. It's something that has been ongoing and that people that are living now are practicing, even if it's not that many people. We don't support contemporary studio art projects. If you have questions about what that means, feel free to contact me about that or ask later on in the Q&A. Ongoing classes where a mentor instructs in a classroom situation. So this is, again, it doesn't have to be a one-on-one mentorship, but we wouldn't support like a workshop series that's open to a large group or literally a class in an institution. And we don't support international apprenticeships. Unfortunately, I wish we could do that because being able to expand that would be incredible as a border state, but at this point, we don't have the capacity to do that. And I think I already mentioned this point. So when I share this presentation, you'll be able to actually open up these links, but at this time, I don't want to exit out of it. But I'll share this out, and it's like a map of all of the apprenticeship pairs that have participated in the past. Let me see if I could just copy the link. Okay, so I dropped it in the chat there. And I think we have some more current apprenticeship pair info on our website. So that page that I shared in the beginning, the Texas Folklife Apprenticeships page, which I'll share again, that actually has the most recent pair in a story map. But I'll go ahead and share this link as well so you can have an example of a different cohort. I do encourage people to look at those examples so that you can see, what types of apprenticeships we've supported in the past, and that can maybe inform your own application. Okay, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the program itself. So right now it is January 15th. I believe the deadline is coming up very soon, but we will potentially extend it. I can't say for sure. I think we have it as January 23rd. So just double check on that. Yes, January 23rd. So once we receive those applications, the applications are reviewed by our team to make sure everything's complete, and then they're passed on to a committee. And so by February is when you would actually get a notification about whether you've been selected for the cohort, and you would basically start working together right away from February to August. We basically ask that all the reporting is done by the beginning of August, but we do have the showcase that can occur in August. And in some cases, we've had people do their presentations in August as well. So that is fine. We just ask that like your actual work sessions happen before the beginning of August. I do want to mention something about the site visits. So I conduct those site visits. Sometimes they're in person and sometimes they're virtual. Obviously, we're a really big state, so I can't be in person at everybody's sessions. I can't go to everybody's studios, but I do try to do a few of these in person. So if you're in the central Texas area, then that would probably be the case that I'm actually able to do an in-person site visit, which really amounts to a interview and some documentation. So if if it's in person, that's kind of what it would look like. If it's virtual, essentially the same idea. It's interview based, just to get to know how you worked together as a pair. With the difference, obviously, being that I can't go around and take pictures in your space. And then the self documentation is every time you have a lesson together, it's just filling out a Google form saying, we met, this is what we worked on, here's a picture of us. So it's really just to document that you met and have been working on what you said you've been working on. And then the showcase happens at the end of the program. We have these every year. If you go on our YouTube, you can see them going back a few years and get a sense of the projects that people have presented in the past. The virtual showcase is optional, but a public presentation is not optional. So you have to do either your own public presentation or participate in the virtual showcase. Okay, I put too many words on this slide, but these are some examples of what a work plan might look like. So this is talking about what you will learn in not what you will learn, what the apprentice will learn in the apprenticeship. So it's a really detailed example of what you'll go over during that time. And this is, I think, Rocio, I think this is from your project. This is an example from our past participant here. So I took this example because it's really good. So this is an example of what this would look like to explain what it is that you'd be actually going through. So you'll see that there's different techniques. There's kind of milestones that the apprentice is meeting. And this will obviously look very different for maybe a music pair. Maybe it's you're focusing more on repertoire and other things like that. But this is just an example of the kind of level of detail that we're looking for. And then we also ask for start date, end date, number of lessons, how many hours you'll be meeting, and then the total hours, as well as where you'll be meeting. Some people do meet virtually, that's fine. But of course, when in-person meetings are possible, I think that's preferable for everyone. Okay, so I did talk a little bit about the site visit, but here's a little bit more detail. We try to do this in the midpoint, so these happen usually in June or July. And it's, again, just an opportunity for me to get to know more about what you've been working on, your experience in the program, etc. We do store those interviews, and they are often used for educational purposes or promotional content. We did just work on a collaborative research project, for example, about apprenticeship programs throughout the country. And so some of those interviews served as examples in that research. So just, something to keep in mind there. Okay, so I did mention that the public presentation is a requirement. The idea here is to share what you've worked on with your community or with the Texas Folklife audience, one or the other. You can certainly do both, but you don't have to. These are some examples of what the public presentations might look like. We had one pair in the last cohort do kind of like a community dinner for their storytelling project. So that is an example of something that maybe doesn't fit into a presentation model, but certainly would work for this program. And again, everybody has the option to fulfill that requirement by participating in the virtual showcase. So if you're not sure if you want to participate in the virtual showcase, that's fine. We kind of ask that later on. But because we don't know in the beginning, we do ask people to kind of outline what they would do for a presentation. And actually, that would be relevant even if you do the virtual showcase, because, for example, if you say, we are going to present a performance of the repertoire that we worked on, that would happen whether you did it live in your community or whether you're doing the virtual showcase. So it's just, this is what we would do in either form. Okay. I do want to pause there because I've been talking a lot. So are there any questions so far?
Um, I just want to see here. Thank you, first of all, for putting this together. I have a few quick questions, and I don't know if the first one is going to get answered in the next thing that you're doing. Do the mentor and the applicant, do we need to put separate applications, or can we collaborate together on what, like, my student is on this call right now. So is he going to put together the application with my input, or do we both put out separate applications?
That's a great question. So I will actually go to the next slide so I can answer that. So there are
I
three
saw that slide
components.
go up. I was like, I think you're going to be answering it, but I just wanted to ask that, and then I have a second question after that.
Okay. There are three components. The first part is filled out together. There are questions for both the mentor and the apprentice. And then there are the parts 2 and 3 that are filled out separately. And that's because those are work sample based.
Okay.
So both of those ask for work samples and also for letters of support for each applicant.
Okay.
So yeah, you'd have to fill everything, the main application you fill out together. Yeah,
Okay, that's all good, and then we'll figure out the work samples from there. The other thing is for the showcase, can we involve or incorporate other performers?
absolutely.
So my
Yes.
concept here is that Levi's an accordionist. I'm teaching him technical accordion stuff, but more importantly, the folk traditions that have evolved in the Texas, German, and Czech communities here. And I'm hoping that Levi can get a band of his peers together potentially, or an ensemble of some sort. And he is also working, there's a children's German folk dance ensemble that has developed here. So if we do a showcase performance and he can take the stuff that we're working on in our sessions and not only showcase it to the community, but involve the community in eventually continuing to propagate this Texas German heritage, that we could put it together.
That sounds amazing. And yes, you can absolutely do that. We have had, for example, in the last cohort, a performance that was kind of student led by the apprentice. We absolutely encourage those types of collaborations, especially when you're doing an art form that involves both music and dance, right? So another example in the last cohort was we had a pair that was focused on flamenco dance and another pair that did flamenco voice, and they worked together on one of their presentations, and then they brought in other musicians as well. So there's definitely a precedent for that, and we love that because you're building community and you're passing on the tradition.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was hoping to hear. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't mixing funds and putting things where they didn't belong.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean to kind of cap that off, I think the repertoire that you're sharing in the performance is the repertoire that you worked on in the apprenticeship, then absolutely that makes perfect sense.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Janelle.
Mhm. All right. So, are there any questions before I move on?
Yes, actually, with the hours that y'all were kind of looking at and the times and the time frame that y'all were looking at, sorry, what if we were to finish before the 6 months? What is, what is acceptable? What is okay with you guys?
That's a good question. So there's actually a minimum of hours that I think.
The total of 40 is the max, and then that's okay after, like as long as
Yeah,
you
like
work 40.
yes, but I'm seeing that that is the example. I think we had an actual
Okay.
minimum. I'll find that number. I think I need to look for that, but I think this is a good benchmark. So if you did around that many hours, I think it's absolutely fine that you don't take 6 months.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay. I'll open it back up for questions after this section, but I want to make sure we get
I
through
have
this.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Yes. We need to, of course, if you gave us the apprentices and accept us, okay. My question is, we need give to Texas for Life a report of our expenses and the end of the program, or no is necessary? Of course,
Um,
we have our control over expenses and all of the things we need, the materials and the trips and all of this. But my question is, we need make some report for Texas for Life in the end.
there is a final report, but we have not historically asked for that level of detail on the
Okay,
expenses.
okay,
No.
okay.
So,
And you continuity this. ¿Puedo hacer la pregunta en español?
sí, claro.
Bueno, eh, Texas for Life continúa enviando, en cuántas partes van a enviar el dinero si es que si es que nuestro proyecto es aceptado.
So
¿Cuál
the
es el periodo de tiempo?
okay, voy a traducir la pregunta
Sí,
para.
por favor.
So the question was, how are the payments made? Like, what does the period look like? How the payments are split up? Um, de la manera que lo hemos hecho en el pasado es una parte al principio y la otra parte más como cerca al final del programa, después
Bien.
que ya ha entregado los materiales.
Después de la entrevista.
Sí, también, después de la entrevista.
Ok,
Sí.
ok. Pero no necesitamos entregar notas o facturas o todas estas cosas.
Facturas no, pero la documentación de los
¿Materiales?
lessons, sí, como documentar los lessons que hiciste con el apprentice, eso sí.
Ok, ok.
Sí.
Bien.
So to answer the question about payment, we make one payment in the beginning and one payment at the end after the program requirements have been fulfilled. So that means after the site visit and after that report and the documentation has been turned in.
Ok, thank you.
Yeah, and that normally will happen around the beginning of August because that's when we expect everything to be turned in. So you can kind of estimate that. Okay, so I'm going to go into the details of the actual application. So I'm just going to restate that all three components need to be turned in. The first part needs to be done collaboratively, the second part by the artist, mentor, and the third part by the apprentice. And I'll go over each one of these. So part one, you're going to just fill in some basic information about each of you. And there's going to be questions that are directed toward either the artist mentor or the apprentice. You're going to have a schedule of how you plan to meet during the apprenticeship and then what you're going to work on. And then the public presentation proposal. So that would be, we're going to learn 5 songs and we're going to present them in this space, in this configuration, right? Or it could be, we're going to learn how to create this type of craft, and then we're going to present it in a gallery. So those are just some examples of what a public presentation can look like. If you're not sure about whether what you're thinking makes sense for the program, please ask me, and I'll try to guide you with that. So yeah, again, questions for each one of you, and then that budget of how you would plan to spend those funds. Questions for the artist, mentor, and apprentice. Okay, so these are answered together. So you're going to answer how you learned about the apprenticeship program, or if somebody referred you, the traditional art form that you're going to be working on. So if that is conjunto music, you would say it's conjunto music, right? Whatever that is. It's just like a quick description. So in some cases, you may be working on a folk or traditional art that is not very well known. In most cases, actually, with a program like this. So please assume that your audience, that means the reviewers, are not necessarily familiar with this folk or traditional. They might be folklorists, they might be artists in their own right, but that doesn't mean they know about what you work on. So try to just summarize for someone who doesn't know what it is that this practice is. And then there's this question about what communities you belong to together. So that can take a lot of different forms. Please interpret that as you wish, whatever is appropriate for the art form that you're working on. Okay, so there's this question about cultural significance. In some cases, people are working on folk or traditional arts that have been in Texas for a very long time. So perhaps a case can be made for, that has that cultural significance. In other cases, they might be a more diasporic practice of a community that lives here in Texas now, or has moved more recently. Either way, you need to make a case for why it's important to continue this practice in your community. So this is the space to do that. There's a question about the learning and teaching approach. So this is more about the nitty-gritty of how you will actually be teaching. What does that look like? What tools are you using? What methods are used, etc. The timeline is pretty straightforward. Just explain what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. And then this question about your motivation. So why did you decide to work together? Have you worked together in the past? What kind of shared experience do you already have? So this gives us a sense of the existing relationship between the mentor and apprentice, and hopefully communicates that there is an existing relationship, right? So ideally, this isn't the first time that you are working together. Cultural continuity. So how do you envision this apprenticeship contributing to the continuation or revitalization of this cultural tradition? Hopefully that answer is very clear to you and you know why you need to pass this on so that the tradition continues. So this is just a place to explain how the apprenticeship will support that. So for example, we've had people in the past say, okay, we worked together before, but this kind of gave us some time to focus, or allowed us to work in a way that normally we wouldn't be able to, right? But that's, just some examples of how maybe people have benefited from the apprenticeship. But kind of going beyond that, what is this really doing for that continuation of the practice? Okay, so I think I already mentioned this timeline. So we don't need to go over that again, but this is where you would detail your lessons and where you're meeting. The public presentation. So again, everybody has to do one of these and propose a plan. So we want to know content, location, potential dates, how you might promote it, how you would engage your community. And again, you can be creative here. So this might take a lot of different shapes and forms depending on what you're working on. Okay, so shifting to questions that are specifically for the artist mentor. So we ask our potential artist mentors to describe your background and experience with this traditional art form. Who taught you? How did you learn it? And what role does this play in your life? So this is an opportunity to give us a little bit of background about how you came to practice this tradition. There's a question about why it's important to your community. So hopefully this isn't something you practice in isolation. It's something that you share with other people. And we hope that you can explain that in this question. Again, another question about your relationship to the apprentice. So why did you choose to work with this apprentice? And have you worked together before? And what impact do you think that the apprenticeship will have on your community? The questions for the apprentice are pretty similar, but of course we're going to be expecting slightly different answers here. So again, your background and experience with the traditional art form, how long you've been practicing. Obviously, the answers here are going to be probably less time than the artist mentor. Who taught you this tradition? What is your skill level? And what role does this art play in your life? We also ask you that same question about why it's important to your community. And that might look different to you than it does to your artist mentor. You may have different reasons for practicing this tradition. Maybe you are of different generations. So we expect this to look a little bit different than the artist mentor response. But it doesn't have to. It's perfectly fine if you have similar motivations. We just want to hear from you and your own personal experience. So why do you want to take part in the apprenticeship program with this artist mentor? Why did you choose to work with this person to learn from? And what are your plans for continuing to practice this traditional art form? How do you intend to share what you've learned with your community? This is, I think, a really important question that shows us, that hopefully this is not an isolated thing, that you're going to continue to do this, and how you're going to continue to do it. Okay, so for the budget, as I mentioned, the awards are up to $4,500. So you should make a budget with that in mind. Of that 4,500, up to 3,000 can go to the mentor, and the rest should go towards these other expenses. So supplies, materials, travel, etc. If you have specific questions about the budget, I do suggest emailing me because these can get really specific. But these are the general guidelines for doing the budget. Okay, so parts 2 and 3. Each of you will submit work samples and letters of support. These are required. Again, this is not optional. If you don't submit this, your application is not considered complete. So that means it will not pass on to the committee review. If you have any issues with submitting these materials, for example, you have questions about how to share uploads or links or anything like that, please get in contact with me ahead of time, and we'll try to work with you to go through that process in whatever way is accessible to you. Okay, so the work sample requirements. I think these are actually a little bit different for the mentor and the apprentice, and in terms of the number of samples. So I think this is from the apprentice work samples. But please look in the application for the exact number for whether you're the apprentice or the mentor. Either way, these are the types of work samples you would submit. So visual artists, you would submit images. Technically, we can accept physical photographs, but I highly encourage you to use digital images, which can just be uploaded within the application on JotForm. Musicians, please actually don't upload things because there's a file limit on JotForm. Not sorry, on a file limit, like a storage limit. So if everybody uploads audio and video files, it's going to run out of space really fast. So we're actually asking people this year to just submit a link to the audio or video. So what that would look like is you can put together a doc that has the list of the links, and then you can upload that document, or you can actually put the links themselves into the application. Either one of those options is fine, but please just plan to upload it somewhere else. Also, very important that you make those files accessible to anyone without having to sign in. If we have to email you to share a folder with us, that's going to be a problem because the reviewers are not going to stop in the middle of the review process to do that. And so what'll happen is that they just won't be able to see your material. So please double check that, send it to a friend, check it with a different email address, whatever you need to do to make sure that those links are accessible. Dancers and other performing artists, kind of the same deal as musicians, except we do need a video for this one. So for that one, you could do like an unlisted YouTube video. That also goes for musicians, that works fine. I will say that if you're a visual artist and you prefer to submit that way, that's absolutely fine as well. Generally, we do prefer for the visual artist to be able to kind of stop and see each image, but if there's a reason why video works better for your craft, then just explain that. For storytellers and other verbal artists, so these should be recorded performances or written examples. So if it's a written example, you can go ahead and upload it in the application as a PDF. If it's a video, you can do the same thing as the performers and just share the link to the video. And the same goes for audio files as well. Okay, so yeah, this is where I noted that audio should be links only, video should be links only. As far as everyone else, if you have images, these would be the type of files that we accept. And for written samples, these are the file types here, PDF, doc, and text. I don't really recommend text as the file type, but we will accept it. When you go in the application, there's an opportunity to write descriptions about your work samples. These are the types of details you should include. So the date, for example, the name of the song you're performing, if there's any other context that needs to be there for the reviewer to understand what they're looking at, please include that in the description. And also identify any contributors. And then this last point here, we don't have a specific time limit, but what I will say is that the amount of time that reviewers will spend on your application is around 20 minutes. So considering everything that they have to review, you want to be really selective with any time-based art form as far as like a music sample or video sample. Try to keep these to 1 or 2 minutes. If you have like a 20-minute video, put the timestamps in so they know exactly the excerpt that you want them to look at. Okay, so the letter of support. This is somewhat straightforward. I mean, it's somebody who can speak to your work as a folk and traditional artist, and your contribution to the art form. They should talk about their relationship to you, the person that they're writing about, the mentor's ability to teach and mentor, their commitment to traditional art form, and why this apprenticeship is important for sustaining this tradition. These fonts are suggestions. The idea here is just choose something that's readable. If this person is representing an institution, they should use the letterhead, and they can send that either within the application or email it to me. And I'm going to write my email again in the chat if anybody joined us after the last time. And you'll notice that there's a subject line if you're sending this via email. This is important because I need to know where to file this. So please include the subject line 2026 mentor support and the name of the person. And the same deal kind of for the apprentice. So a person who can speak to your commitment to the folk and traditional art. They should mention their relationship to you, any prior experience that you have in this folk traditional art. And in this case, the apprentice's potential to become a future tradition bearer. And so why this apprenticeship program would specifically benefit this person on the road to becoming this future tradition bearer. And the same deal goes with the submitting of the letter of recommendation. You can submit it in the application or email it to me with the appropriate subject line. Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, so I'm going to go through this selection process quickly, but I will be sharing these slides on the webpage, and we'll also be sharing the video of this presentation, so you can come back to this. As I mentioned, the process is by committee review. We generally have 3 to 5 committee members that review the application materials. They use a rubric and they score the applications. Then we have a meeting in which they discuss the applications and revise scores, and then they make their final recommendations for selections. As far as who's on the committee, we have folklorists, folk and traditional artists, culture bearers, past apprenticeship program participants, and we try to have at least one out-of-state folklorist or folk scholar. This is what the rubric looks like. So we are looking at artistic quality and commitment, the feasibility of the work plan, and the impact that this apprenticeship would have on the community. So you'll notice that there's significance and there's impact, slightly different things. So the significance of the art form within the community that's being practiced, and then the impact that the continuation of this art form through this apprenticeship program would have. On the artistic quality section, there's the artistic strength of the mentor and the skill and commitment of the apprentice. So again, slightly different, but we are looking at both of those things. Okay, so for artistic quality and commitment, this is the criteria. The artist mentor's work sample should show evidence of high quality artistic accomplishments and skills. The application questions establish their background and experience as a master in the art form. And this is where that would be addressed. As far as the apprentice, we want to see evidence of artistic accomplishment appropriate for their skill level, which again should be an intermediate level. And we want to see that they're dedicated to developing their skills in this art form. So yeah, showing the commitment to the art form, plans to continue practicing, and the intention to develop skills and advance artistic ability. The feasibility of the work plan, we just want to see that you're being realistic about what you can accomplish in the parameters of this apprenticeship program over 5 to 6 months, that the public presentation makes sense, that the budget is appropriate, and the proposed expenses also make sense for what you're planning to do. So the impact in the community, the application demonstrates the role and significance of the tradition in the community's life. I think that that is a pretty expansive question, but again, I mentioned like not practicing in isolation, so this should be something that is significant to a community. And the application demonstrates how the continuation of the tradition through this apprenticeship contributes to the cultural, artistic tradition of the art form and the heritage of traditional arts practiced in Texas. I think the practiced in Texas part is key here. So even if it is a diasporic art form and it's practiced in other parts of the country or the world, what impact is it having here in Texas? Oh, okay, we got through all of that. I'll open it up for questions for the last 4 minutes.
Okay, really quick. Can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So, um, what about sources? What about like for history, someone that's wise in a certain source, reaching out and asking for help. What about sources?
So I'm not sure I understand the
Oh,
question.
okay. So I am going to be doing a sculpture, and there is a lot of history in part of the headpieces. And so I wanted to reach out to one of the teachers and one of that is super active in the community, um, and its awareness, and having him, teach me the technique, and basically teaching me and how, like, incorporating it to the sculpture, basically. Sorry for
So this teacher would be your mentor.
No. Um, I would have my mentor teaching me how to do the paper mache and sculpture.
Okay.
But part of the sculpture that I would like to add, and part of the history and heritage, I wanted to add that headpiece, and I wanted to just have someone knowledgeable about it just to do it correctly, you know.
Okay, I understand. Um, the scope of the apprenticeship would be you working with your mentor. So as long as you're fulfilling those requirements and you work with your mentor, and that is the basis of your project that you're developing, you can work with whoever else you want to outside of the scope of the apprenticeship. We just wouldn't provide support to that person.
Right. Okay. So then it would just be an artist preference whether to give them a shout out or not, learning the technique, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I
Gotcha.
mean,
Okay.
I would recommend that you do acknowledge them. But as far as
100%. Yes. No, I just wanted to see if it was a requirement or not. But you're saying it's not a requirement, but of course we would still like to recognize. I just didn't know if there was a format in what y'all were looking for when it came
Mhm.
to reaching out to other sources, but just as like a way to learn about just a quick little, technique, basically for us that we could apply together in our project. But since there's no technical like format or anything, we'll obviously tell them thank you and give them a shout out and recognize
All
them.
right.
Okay, gotcha.
Mhm. Next question. Or rather, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, wow, I must have answered everything then. Okay, well, if anything else comes up, please email me. I'll try to get these slides up on the webpage as soon as I can. I just have to pass them off to the person who does that. But yeah, please check back for that information. And thank you for attending the info session today.
Thank you.